They were the architects of impossible wealth, charismatic brokers, tech wizards, and trusted financiers who dangled the dream of effortless riches before millions. But what began as a whisper of prosperity soon echoed with the screams of ruin, as fabricated empires crumbled under the weight of their own deception. In this documentary, we unravel 10 of the most audacious Ponzi schemes that ensnared the globe, exposing the fragile line between ambition and annihilation. From immigrant hustlers to Wall Street titans, these stories reveal how greed can masquerade as genius, and how the truth always exacts its toll. If you're already gripped by these tales of towering deception, hit that subscribe button for the crime o'clock, your front row seat to the shadows, where fortune flips to fallout. And don't forget to like and turn on notifications, so you never miss the next unraveling. Now, let's dive into the first mirage. Case 1. The stamp that stole a fortune. Charles Ponzi's postal mirage. Imagine a man with a smile as wide as the Atlantic, promising fortunes wrapped in the humble envelope of a postage stamp. In the summer of 1920, he stood before crowds in Boston's North End, his voice a siren's call to the immigrant dreamers who'd crossed oceans for a better life, only to watch their savings vanish into a scheme as fragile as the paper it mimicked. How did one ordinary clerk turn a bureaucratic loophole into a whirlwind that sucked in millions, leaving a trail of shattered families and a word etched forever into the lexicon of deceit? Charles Ponzi arrived in America in 1903, a 21-year-old from Lugo, Italy, with little more than a suitcase and a head full of schemes. Tall, dapper, with a mustache that curled like a question mark, he embodied the hustler's charm, quick-witted, fluent in multiple languages, and always one step ahead of the authorities back home, where he'd already served time for check fraud. Boston welcomed him with the grit of its working-class streets, a city teeming with Italian enclaves, where fresh arrivals scraped by in factories and fish markets. Ponzi bounced through jobs: grocery clerk, waiter, bank teller, each a stepping stone in his restless ascent. By 1917, he'd married Rose Necco, a sharp-eyed stenographer who would become his steadfast partner in both life and ledger. They settled into a modest flat on Hanover Street, surrounded by the aroma of espresso and the murmur of dialects from the old country. To his neighbors, Ponzi was Carlo, the affable dreamer, always talking big about striking it rich. He dabbled in real estate flips and stock tips, but nothing stuck until the armistice of World War I reshaped the world's currencies like cracked glass. In those post-war months, exchange rates fluctuated wildly, and Ponzi, ever the opportunist, spotted a glimmer in the mundane. International reply coupons, or IRCs, those small, green vouchers sold abroad for a fraction of their redemption value in America. A clerk's insight, or so it seemed, into a harmless arbitrage that could multiply money overnight. But whispers of discontent rippled through the community by early 1919. Ponzi's latest venture, the Hanover Trust Company, had faltered, leaving investors grumbling. Desperate for a lifeline, he seized on the IRC idea during a late-night conversation with a fellow Italian, William McGinley, who mentioned the coupon's potential. What if, Ponzi pondered, he bought IRCs cheap in Europe, where stamp cost mere cents, and redeemed them at face value in the U.S., pocketing the difference? The math sang like a ballad: 50% returns in 45 days, doubled to 100% in 90. He launched the Securities Exchange Company in December 1919, not with fanfare, but with a quiet ad in a local Italian newspaper. Double your money in 3 months. At first, it was small, $5,000 from friends and family, funneled into a rented office that soon swelled with clerks and cash. Word spread like wildfire through the tenements. Shoemakers invested their life savings, widows their pensions, young couples their wedding funds. Ponzi paid early redeemers promptly, not from profits, but from the influx of new money, a pyramid's elegant deceit, where the base bore the weight until it buckled. By February 1920, his office overflowed. Lines snaked down the block as Boston's middle class joined the frenzy. Bankers, doctors, even the mayor's circle whispered his name. Ponzi's lifestyle ballooned: a chauffeured limousine, diamond cufflinks, a mansion in the suburbs dubbed the Swells. He hosted lavish parties, his laughter echoing over crystal glasses, while Rose managed the books with a ledger that grew thicker by the day. Yet beneath the gloss, cracks formed. He bought few actual IRCs, barely enough to fill a shoebox, relying instead on the perpetual motion of fresh deposits. When a reporter from the Boston Post, Norman Chandler, caught wind of irregularities in March, Ponzi dismissed him with a bribe and a bluff. But the moral fault line had cracked. Greed, once a spark, now roared into an inferno, consuming the very trust he'd built on borrowed dreams. The unraveling began not with a bang, but a post office memo. In June 1920, U.S. postal inspectors, alerted by a tip from a disgruntled broker, audited Ponzi's claimed IRC holdings. They found discrepancies, millions promised, but only a handful of coupons in his possession, valued at $60,000 against $7 million in liabilities. Chandler's paper pounced, publishing exposés that peeled back the facade. "Ponzi's 45-day miracle a mirage," screamed the headlines, igniting panic. Investors stormed the office, demanding withdrawals. Fights broke out in the streets as clerks barricaded the doors with filing cabinets. Ponzi, ever the showman, addressed the mob from an upper window, his voice steady. "I am the biggest gambler in Boston." But inside, the machinery ground to a halt. Federal agents from the Bureau of Investigation, precursors to the FBI, swarmed in, seizing ledgers that revealed the truth. No investments, just a ledger of IOUs, with $15 million collected in 7 months, $2 million already siphoned to Ponzi's pockets. Clues piled like unpaid bills, forged bank statements, shell companies in Canada, even a desperate wire to Europe for phantom coupons that never arrived. As the probe deepened, suicide shadowed the scandal, a tailor leaping from a bridge, his pockets lined with Ponzi's worthless notes. The pursuit escalated through sweltering July days, with Ponzi dodging subpoenas in his armored car, while Rose burned documents in the fireplace. Whispers turned to accusations. Was he a genius or a fool? The investigators, led by sharp-eyed prosecutor John S. Shaw, traced the money trail to safety deposit boxes stuffed with cash, $1.2 million in a single vault. By August, the net closed. Ponzi surrendered not in defeat, but with a flourish, posing for photographs as if it were a debutante ball. The trial unfolded in Boston's federal courthouse that November, a spectacle that packed the galleries with the very victims who'd once cheered him. Ponzi, impeccably tailored, took the stand in his own defense of fatal hubris. For 3 days, he spun tales of IRC windfalls and secret deals, his charisma flickering like a dying bulb under cross-examination. Shaw dismantled him methodically. "Where are the coupons, Mr. Ponzi?" The silence was damning. Jurors, many from the immigrant neighborhoods he'd fleeced, deliberated just 2 hours before convicting him on 9 counts of mail fraud. The sentence, 5 to 50 years in federal prison, plus $5 million in restitution, an amount that mocked the empty vaults. Rose, tear-streaked but unbowed, received a lighter term of 2 years. Courtroom shocks rippled outward. Ponzi's confession, whispered to a guard, admitted the scheme was castle in the air. Victims testified in broken English, their stories a litany of loss. A mother whose nest egg vanished, leaving her children to charity. A veteran bankrupted twice over. As marshals led him away in chains, Ponzi flashed that trademark smile, murmuring, "The game was worth the candle." But for the thousands ruined, the flame had scorched too deep. In the years that followed, Ponzi bounced through prisons like a pinball. Federal lockup in Atlanta, then Massachusetts State Pen, where he toiled in the laundry, his once lustrous hair graying under the weight of regret. Paroled in 1934 after 12 years, he was deported to Italy, where Mussolini's regime briefly employed him as an English translator before casting him aside. Penniless, he drifted to Brazil, dying in 1949 of a heart attack in a Rio charity ward, his last words a plea for water. The aftermath lingered like smoke. Boston's economy staggered, trust in financial markets scarred for a generation. Yet in the reflection, a deeper shadow emerges. Not just one man's avarice, but the collective hunger that fed it. Ponzi didn't invent the pyramid. Society built the ladder he climbed, mistaking motion for progress. His victims, those hard-working souls chasing the American promise, learned the cruelest truth. Fortune favors the bold, but devours the blind. Today, his name warns us still that the allure of quick riches is often just a stamp on an empty envelope, sealing fates before they're even opened. He promised the world on a postage stamp, until the postman delivered his downfall. Case 2. The eldercare illusion. Mutual benefits deadly annuities. Picture this. A quiet Florida suburb, where retirees in pastel bungalows clip coupons and dream of untroubled tomorrows, only to wake one day to eviction notices and empty pill bottles. In the late 1990s, a company called Mutual Benefits Corporation promised them sanctuary through viatical settlements, buying terminally ill patients' life insurance policies at a discount, a compassionate hand extended in their hour of need. But what if the terminally ill were ghosts on paper, and the payouts a mirage that evaporated billions, pushing the vulnerable over the edge into despair? How did a trusted eldercare firm morph into a Ponzi's grave, where the only certainty was betrayal? Stephen Steiner founded Mutual Benefits in 1994, a lanky attorney from Fort Lauderdale with a reputation for straight-laced financial planning. At 40, he was the picture of suburban stability, married to his college sweetheart, father to 2 young daughters, and a fixture at Temple Beth AM, where he volunteered for senior outreach programs. Florida's sun-soaked retirement havens were his playground, a state swollen with 3 million seniors by the mid-90s, many clutching life insurance policies bought decades earlier when premiums were cheap, but values now soared into 6 figures. Steiner, spotting a niche in the AIDS crisis's shadow, pitched viaticals as moral arbitrage. Investors fronted cash to buy policies from the dying at 50 to 80 of face value, collected the full payout upon death, and pocketed the spread, all tax-free, with yields of 10 to 15 annually. It was framed as win-win, mercy for the afflicted, riches for the righteous. Mutual Benefits started small, in a nondescript office park off I-95, with Steiner and a handful of salesmen cold-calling nursing homes. Brochures glowed with testimonials from teary-eyed widows, and seminars at country clubs featured guest speakers, doctors vouching for the ethics, rabbis blessing the benevolence. By 1996, the firm had ballooned to 200 employees, its client list a roll call of the elderly elite, teachers' unions, church groups, even European pension funds. Steiner's persona shone, philanthropic, with donations to hospice charities and a yacht named Second Chance that hosted investor schmoozes. Behind the scenes, his partner, Jeffrey Friedman, a wiry actuary with a knack for numbers, crunched the projections. They built a database of policies, verified by medical experts who signed off on diagnoses. Life hummed with promise, quarterly dividends mailed promptly, a 98% success rate, touted in ads. Investors, many in their 70s themselves, saw it as a bulwark against nursing home costs, entrusting nest eggs built over lifetimes of frugality. Steiner's world was one of quiet confidence, where handshakes sealed deals, and the only shadows were the patient's fading pulses, or so it seemed. The shift came subtly, like fog rolling over the Everglades, in the summer of 1997. As AIDS treatments advanced with protease inhibitors, life expectancy stretched. Patients once given months now lingered for years. Mutual Benefits model, predicated on swift deaths, began to bleed. Premiums outpaced payouts, forcing Steiner to dip into new investments to cover old ones. What started as a cash flow tweak evolved into outright fabrication. Salesmen, under pressure from ballooning quotas, fudged medical reports, upping ages, inflating illnesses, even inventing AIDS cases from routine flu diagnoses. The database swelled with phantom policies, names of the deceased recycled, policies bought from insurers that never existed. By 1999, with $2 billion under management from 30,000 investors, the firm was a house of cards. Steiner and Friedman siphoned millions for luxuries, a $10 million mansion in Palm Beach, private jets to Vegas, fleets of Bentleys parked at the office like trophies. They hired a PR firm to polish the image, sponsoring golf tournaments for seniors, while burying complaints in arbitration clauses. The moral breach deepened. A whistleblower in turn, spotting duplicate policies, was fired with a severance gag. Investors noticed delays, dividends late by months, excuses of market volatility. But loyalty held, fueled by cherry-picked success stories. Behind the respectability, the darkness metastasized. Steiner, once a Temple elder, now hosted bacchanals where cocaine dusted the deal tables. The crime crystallized in a boardroom memo from 2000. Accelerate redemptions with fresh capital. No disclosure. Greed had cracked the facade, turning a lifeline into a noose, as the elderly poured in their last dollars, blind to the void below. Suspicion stirred in early 2000 when a Tampa retiree, Evelyn Marcus, 82 and widowed, chased a bounce dividend check to Mutual Benefits' door. What she found, a receptionist fumbling for answers, ignited a spark. Marcus, no shrinking violet, rallied her bridge club, and soon a class action murmur reached Florida's insurance regulators. The state's Office of Insurance Regulation, under Commissioner Tom Gallagher, launched a discreet probe in March, subpoenaing policy files. What they uncovered chilled the air. Of 5,000 sample viaticals, only 12 were legitimate. The rest, forgeries with doctored death certificates, patients alive and well in Ohio, oblivious to their deaths. Investigators, a team of forensic accountants led by sharp-minded auditor Lisa Hayes, traced the money. $1.8 billion in, $400 million out. The rest vanished into offshore accounts in the Caymans. Clues mounted like storm clouds. A sales script coaching lies about imminent payoffs. Emails joking about zombie policies that wouldn't die. The pursuit intensified as federal securities watchdogs joined, the SEC sniffing unregistered offerings. Steiner stonewalled, lawyering up with a Miami powerhouse, but cracks showed. A salesman flipped, spilling tapes of pressure calls. Sell or starve. By October, raids hit the office. Agents hauled servers and shredders, finding a kill list of policies to fabricate next. Whispers spread through retirement communities like kudzu. Telethons of panic, as investors compared notes on undelivered funds. Hayes' team escalated, freezing assets and alerting Interpol for the offshore trails. The net tightened through humid fall nights, with Steiner spotted fleeing to a safe house. His phone logs a roadmap of desperation. What began as a checkbook glitch had become a federal manhunt, the clues weaving a tapestry of systemic rot that no viatical vow could conceal. The trial commenced in Miami's federal courthouse in June 2003, a 3-month marathon that turned the humid docket into a pressure cooker. Steiner and Friedman, side by side in tailored suits, faced 17 counts of securities fraud, money laundering, and racketeering, RICO charges that painted Mutual Benefits as a criminal enterprise. The prosecution, helmed by fiery Assistant U.S. Attorney Maria Rodriguez, paraded victims like Evelyn Marcus, her voice quavering as she described selling her home to invest, only to end up on food stamps. "They stole my sunset years," she said, tears tracing the lines of a life upended. Revelation stunned the jury. Autopsy mismatches proving fake deaths. Bank wires to Steiner's yacht fund mid-crisis. Friedman crumbled first, pleading guilty in a deal that spared him 20 years for testimony, his whispers confirming the Ponzi pivot. "We were paying Peter with Paul's corpse." Steiner, defiant to the end, took the stand, blaming rogue employees in a performance that fooled no one. Cross-examination eviscerated him. "Mr. Steiner, how many of your dying clients attended your holiday party?" The courtroom gasped at exhibits, photos of deceased policyholders toasting champagne. After 5 days of deliberation, verdicts landed like thunder, guilty on all counts. Steiner drew 20 years in federal prison, Friedman 15. Restitution ordered at $1.7 billion, a sum as hollow as their promises. Shocks echoed beyond the bench. Suicides followed verdicts. A Des Moines investor leaping from his balcony. Note citing "betrayed in my frailty." As bailiffs cuffed them, Steiner's eyes met his daughter's in the gallery. A silent fracture in the family facade he'd so carefully curated. The fallout rippled like aftershocks through Florida's silver-haired heartland. Mutual Benefits' collapse in 2002 had already triggered a receiver's auction, assets liquidated for pennies, leaving 80 of investors, many scraping by on Social Security. With nothing, the viatical industry, once a $1.5 billion niche, shriveled under new regulations, forcing ethical firms to shutter. Steiner served 12 years, paroled in 2015 to a halfway house. His fortune forfeited, family scattered. Friedman, out earlier, faded into obscurity, a cautionary ghost. But the reflection cuts deeper than ledgers. In preying on the elderly's terror of outliving their means, Mutual Benefits exposed a frailty in us all, the desperate grasp for security that blinds us to the hands reaching for our pockets. These weren't faceless marks. They were grandparents who'd weathered wars and recessions, only to fall to a scheme dressed as compassion. Today, as longevity stretches further, their story whispers a warning. In the twilight of life, Trust is the most precious policy, and the easiest to counterfeit. The illusion of elder care became their elegy, a reminder that some debts, once called in, leave only echoes of what might have been. They vowed to ease the dying's burden, until they became the death of the living. If cases like this fascinate you, subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, where every mystery has a ticking timeline waiting to be uncovered. Case 3. The Miracle Herb Hoax. Yilishan Tianqi's Bitter Harvest. In the shadowed valleys of rural Liaoning, where frostbit fields stretch like forgotten promises, a single box of wriggling black ants held the whisper of salvation, or so they were told. By 2007, over 1 million souls had staked their futures on these tiny creatures, feeding them scraps in the dead of night, dreaming of the vitality tonic that would make them rich and robust. But when the buyback checks bounced like hollow echoes, the earth drank deep of despair. Suicides by the score, a man ablaze in Tiananmen Square, and villages hollowed out by grief. How did a humble ant farmer's elixir seduce an entire province into ruin, turning hope into a harvest of horror? Wang Fengyu emerged from the grid of Liaoning's industrial decay in the late 1990s, a self-made man whose story mirrored the rags-to-riches tales peddled in state-run newspapers. Born in 1958 to a peasant family in rural Liaoning, he clawed his way from factory floors to entrepreneurial fame, his sharp eye spotting opportunity in the ancient lore of traditional Chinese medicine. At 41, he founded Yilishan Tianqi Group in 1999, a modest outfit in a converted warehouse on the outskirts of Liaoyang, promising health elixirs drawn from the earth's humblest warriors, black mountain ants. Wang, with his broad smile and calloused hands, positioned himself as the people's champion, a philanthropist who donated to local schools and whispered of restoring China's vitality after decades of Maoist austerity. His flagship product, Tianqi, a powdered tonic blended from pulverized ants, herbs, and secret spices, touted miraculous cures, boosted immunity, eternal youth, even a Viagra-like spark for the weary. Sold in over 50,000 pharmacies nationwide, it racked up 15 billion yuan in annual sales by 2006, its ads flickering across state TV like fireflies in the dusk. Wang courted celebrities for endorsements. Bao Shishuan, China's tallest man, swigged the brew on camera. Comedian Zhao Benshan joked it kept his laughs lively. Government nods followed, photographs with Commerce Minister Bo Xilai, a direct marketing license in early 2007, even enawed as one of China's top 10 entrepreneurial leaders. To the peasants and laid-off workers of Liaoning's rusting factories, Wang was a beacon. His seminars and village halls brimmed with testimonials from recruited farmers, flashing fat envelopes of profit. Life in those years hummed with tentative optimism. Families gathered around flickering screens, pooling meager savings, retirement pensions, dowry funds, children's tuition, into the ant breeding program. Buy a box of 2,000 ants for 1,200 yuan. Raise them 3 months on sugar water, egg yolk, and cake crumbs in humid sheds, then sell back to Yilishan for 1,800 yuan. A 50 return, they were promised. Reinvest, and watch the colony multiply like wealth itself. Wang's world was one of calculated benevolence, his factory churning ant wine and pills under banners of harmony through health, while he funded Liaoyang subway dreams and Olympic charities with 1.4 million in gifts. To the rural poor, he wasn't a salesman. He was salvation incarnate, a man who turned insects into independence. The fracture appeared like a hairline crack in porcelain during the sultry spring of 2007, when medical advances and market saturation dulled the tonic shine. Sales of Tianqi plummeted, pharmacies stocked less, consumers turned to cheaper imports, and the cash flow that once lubricated the ant buyback machine sputtered dry. Wang, ensconced in a sprawling villa overlooking the Han River, faced a devil's choice: shutter the dream or double down on deception. He chose the latter, a moral pivot as subtle as shifting soil. By May, the program shed its thin veil of legitimacy. New investor funds weren't funneled into ant farms or factories, but straight into payouts for earlier marks, a classic Ponzi churn masked as expansion. Recruiters, once humble salesmen in threadbare jackets, turned aggressive door-to-door in hamlets, preying on the desperate with tales of guaranteed government backing. Wang's inner circle, a cadre of loyal managers, fabricated ledgers showing phantom ant harvests, while bribes, rumored in the millions, silenced skeptical officials. The founder's excesses ballooned, fleets of Mercedes clogging the factory lot, mistresses in Beijing apartments, a personal ant collection empire that never saw a single harvest. Whispers slithered through the villages. The ants aren't multiplying. A widow might murmur over tea. But hope, that stubborn weed, choked them out. Early redeemers still pocketed tidy sums, their success stories broadcast on Yeltsin's hotline, luring deeper the already hooked. By autumn, the pyramid's apex teetered. Over 1 million participants, from Heilongjiang to Hubei, had sunk 20 billion yuan into the scheme, the sheds alive with the frantic skitter of unpaid promises. Wang, once the everman's hero, now paced boardrooms lit by the glow of falsified spreadsheets, his philanthropy a smokescreen for the rot gnawing at the core. The crime wasn't born in malice, but in the quiet calculus of a man who believed his own myth, until the myth demanded blood to sustain it. The unraveling ignited on a biting November morning in 2007, when the first wave of buyback deadlines passed unmet, checks as empty as harvested fields. In Shenyang, Liaoning's steely capital, over 10,000 investors, faces gaunt from skipped meals, marched on the provincial government, their placards scrawled with pleas. Give us our ants due. Riot police, helmets glinting under gray skies, met them with batons and tear gas, a clash that spilled blood onto the pavement and headlines onto national news. Investigators from the Liaoning Public Security Bureau, tipped by a defecting recruiter whose own family had invested, descended on Yeltsin's headquarters that week, their warrants cutting through the factories, din like a cold wind. What they unearthed was a labyrinth of deceit. Warehouses bare of ants, ledgers bloated with recycled funds, 18 billion yuan in, barely 6 billion out, and offshore slush funds traced to Wang's kin. Clues cascaded. TV ad contracts forged with celebrity signatures, a research lab producing tonic from imported sugar rather than sacred insects, emails boasting of bribe budgets to secure that fateful marketing license. The probe escalated under the watchful eye of Beijing. Unnerved by the scheme's shadow over the impending 2008 Olympics, agents fanned out to villages, interviewing tearful farmers whose life savings, up to 50,000 yuan per household, had vanished into the void. Protests multiplied, met with arrests and beatings. One widow, her voice a rasp from sleepless nights, slipped a ledger fragment to an undercover cop, revealing the Ponzi's pulse. New money propping old lies. Wang fled briefly to a coastal hideaway, but the net drew tight. Phone taps capturing frantic calls to officials, a safe cracked open to spill 2 million yuan in cash. By December, the pursuit had become a national reckoning, the clues painting not just fraud, but betrayal of the rural soul that had propped up China's miracle. Whispers of suicides filtered in, a farmer hanging from his shed rafters, another swallowing pesticide in the dawn, each a grim breadcrumb leading investigators to the heart of the harvest gone sour. The trial, a spectacle of suppressed fury, convened in Liaoyang's district court in May 2009. Wang Fengyu and 54 accomplices crammed into the dock like ants in a jar, facing charges of fraud, illegal business operations, and bribery, crimes that carried the death penalty in China's unyielding code. The proceedings unfolded over weeks, galleries packed with hooded victims too fearful to show their faces. Prosecutors, led by steely Liao Yuan, unveiled the horrors in stark exhibits, bank records funneling billions to luxury lairs, witness testimonies from beaten protesters, a video of Wang's TV confession from December 2007, where he'd bowed low, murmuring, "I bear full responsibility for the unrest." Revelation stunned even the hardened judges. The tonic's miracle formula, lab-tested as mere chalk and caffeine, bribes totaling 10 million yuan to officials, including gifts to Olympic committees. Wang, once dapper in tailored suits, now haggard in a prison jumpsuit, testified in a voice stripped of bluster. The ants were real. The dream just grew too big. Cross-examination shredded him. "How many lives did your growth claim, Mr. Wang?" Drawing gasps at suicide tallies. At least 7 confirmed, whispers of dozens more, including that Tiananmen immolation, a desperate flare against the regime's glare. Accomplices flipped like dominoes, one manager sobbing of pressure to recruit kin. After a month's deliberation, sentences crashed down. Wang to life imprisonment, his fortune seized, 20 years for top aides, death stayed for a bribe taker. Restitution? A mocking 12 billion yuan order, unenforceable against the evaporated empire. Courtroom echoes lingered, a victim's keening wail. My son's future, eaten by bugs. As guards hauled Wang away, his empire reduced to echoes in empty sheds. The bitter harvest reaped scars that time has yet to till. Yilishan liquidated in a fire sale, its factory a rusting relic, while Liaoning's villages staggered under the weight. Families evicted, children yanked from schools, a generation's trust in elixirs and entrepreneurs shattered. Suicides shadowed the collapse like autumn leaves. Beyond the immolated man in Beijing, reports trickled of mass poisonings in hamlets, bodies found amid ant crates, notes decrying government complicity. Beijing's iron fist quashed further unrest, labeling protesters disruptive elements ahead of the Olympics, with hundreds detained and monitored. Wang rots in a Qingqing cell, his charitable halo tarnished, while victims clawed scraps from state aid pots. Meager pensions doled in secret, lest the hunger spread. In reflection, Yilishan's tale unmasks the fragility of China's rural underbelly, a nation racing toward superpower status, leaving millions to chase ants in the dark, their faith in tonics a proxy for faith in progress. Wang didn't invent the pyramid, poverty built it, desperation its mortar, and the system's blind spots its height. For those million lost souls, the true poison wasn't in the ants, but in the promise that wealth could crawl from the earth, leaving only barren soil and the faint, accusing skitter of what might have been. They bred miracles in the dirt, until the dirt claimed its due. Case 4. The Phantom Portfolio. Bernie Madoff's Wall Street Shadow. Envision a penthouse overlooking Central Park, where holiday lights twinkled on a family Christmas tree in December 2008, and a father, once the unassailable oracle of wealth, turned to his sons with tears in his eyes and confessed, "It's all just one big lie." For nearly 2 decades, Bernard Madoff had woven a tapestry of fabricated returns that ensnared billionaires, charities, and everyday savers alike, his firm a black box of bogus trades promising 10 to 12 year after year, rain or recession. But as the markets hemorrhaged, so did the illusion, exposing 65 billion in vapor, the largest Ponzi in history. How did a market-making legend, trusted by the SEC itself, orchestrate a shadow that eclipsed the sun? Bernard Lawrence Madoff was born in 1938 in Queens, New York, to a modest Jewish family scraping by in the plumbing trade. His father Abe a dreamer, his mother Sylvia a schoolteacher with a knack for numbers. Bernie, wiry and intense, with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual squint, cut his teeth on Wall Street at 22, scraping together 5,000 from lifeguard gigs and beach installations to found Bernard L. Madoff Investment Securities in 1960. From a cramped brokerage in the garment district, he pioneered electronic trading, NASDAQ's backbone, earning a rep as the innovator who democratized stocks for the little guy. By the 1970s, he'd married Ruth Alpern, daughter of a Greenwich Village accountant, and fathered 2 sons, Mark and Andrew, in a life of quiet affluence. A $2 million Upper East Side co-op, summers in Montauk, a 55-foot yacht christened Bull. Madoff's persona was impeccable, chairman of the NASDAQ in 1990, a confidant to regulators, the man who mentored aspiring traders with folksy wisdom. Trust is everything. His advisory business, a discreet feeder for select clients, hummed in the Lipstick Building's 19th floor, a velvet rope club for the elite. Steven Spielberg's Wunderkinder Foundation, Elie Wiesel's foundation, even the family office of a Palm Beach billionaire. Investors, drawn by word of mouth in synagogue halls and country clubs, wired funds with minimal due diligence, yield steady as a metronome, audited statements from phantom accountants. Life in the 1980s and 90s was a golden haze. Madoff hosted SEC golf outings, donated to Jewish causes, his sons rising as lieutenants in the firm. To the world, he was the wizard behind the curtain, his opacity a badge of sophistication. Ruth managed the home front with poise, hosting seders where talk turned to Bernie's magic. The family's world was one of unblemished ascent, where market crashes, like 1987, barely dented the returns, because, in truth, they never had to. The pivot came in the frosty dawn of the dot-com bust in 2000, when redemptions surged like a tide against Madoff's dam. His legitimate market-making arm thrived, but the advisory side, a black hole of fabricated trades, had long since abandoned real investments. By 1960 standards, it was a simple slight. Client statements printed monthly, showing buys and sells in blue-chip stocks via a proprietary split-strike conversion strategy. Options hedges on the SP 100, a chimera of consistency. No actual trades, just ledger entries, payoffs from new inflows. But as tech stocks cratered, demands for cash spiked, $500 million in a quarter, straining the influx. Madoff, ensconced in his corner office with Manhattan sprawled below, authorized the first outright lies, backdated trades, inflated valuations, even loans from the firm's capital. Greed, once a quiet companion, swelled into a leviathan by 2003, with $17 billion under management. He siphoned $100 million for the family, Ruth's Jewels, Mark's real estate, Andrew's startups, while charities like Hadassah begged for more. The moral fracture deepened in boardrooms thick with cigar smoke. Frank DePascali, his right-hand fixer, later confessed to dread. We knew it was wrong, but the momentum. Whistleblowers like Harry Markopolos, a quant who spotted the math's impossibility in 2000. 17 annualized, no down years. It's a fraud. Were dismissed by the SEC as cranks. Madoff's charisma cloaked it all. At industry galas, he'd quip, "I trade while you sleep." Behind the gloss, the shadow lengthened. Suicides loomed in whispers. A Palm Beach investor's wife overdosing on pills after a margin call that never should have come. The crime crystallized not in a single theft, but a symphony of silences. Auditors paid to look away. Family blind to the blood on the books. By 2008, as subprime froze the world, the pyramid quaked. Redemptions hit $7 billion in weeks. New money dried to a trickle. Madoff paced his triplex, the holiday cheer a cruel foil, knowing the endgame had arrived. The confession shattered the facade on December 10, 2008, when Madoff pulled Mark and Andrew aside, his voice a rasp. "There's no money. It's a Ponzi." The sons, horrified, alerted authorities that night, triggering a dawn raid on the Lipstick Building by FBI agents in windbreakers, their warrants slicing through the holiday hush. What they seized, servers humming with 4.3 million pages of fake statements, unleashed a procedural tempest. Investigators from the SEC and DOJ, led by Bulldog Prosecutor J. Nick Marsh, pored over the digital detritus, trade logs with timestamps from weekends, option volumes exceeding global markets, a 17th floor of coders scripting illusions. Clues cascaded like dominoes, DePascali flipping in January 2009, his guilty plea spilling the strategy's guts. Bernie said it was a giant Ponzi from the beginning. The pursuit spanned continents, Swiss banks frozen, feeder funds like Fairfield Greenwich probed for complicity. $7.5 billion funneled blind. Madoff stonewalled at first, feigning a liquidity crisis. But the net tightened. Phone taps captured Ruth's frantic calls to jewelers, family jets grounded by subpoenas. By February, the tally emerged. $65 billion in paper losses, 37,000 victims from Tokyo to Tel Aviv. Jewish federations bankrupted. Holocaust survivors' nests emptied. Whispers of self-harm circled. Investigators raced to secure assets, auctioning yachts and homes. Marsh's team escalated, raiding Madoff's Montauk retreat to find duffel bags of cash. 1.5 million stuffed like dirty laundry. The probe's tension peaked in spring depositions, where even Ruth invoked the fifth, her poise cracking under lights. What started as a family whisper had ballooned into a global autopsy. The clues etching a portrait of institutional blindness. The SEC ignoring Markopolos' 9 warnings over a decade. As indictment snowballed, 12 insiders charged, the shadow's edges sharpened, revealing not just one man's deceit, but a Wall Street complicity that let the phantom feast unchecked. The trial, a compressed affair in Manhattan's federal court, kicked off in March 2009, Madoff pleading guilty to 11 felony counts before a single witness took the stand. A mercy to victims or a coward's exit. At 71, gaunt in a gray suit, he shuffled to the podium, his voice mechanical as he recited the sins: securities fraud, money laundering, perjury. A $65 billion colossus built on lies upon lies. Revelations hammered like gavels. $13.2 billion in principal lost, the rest illusory profits. Feeder funds that peddled access like Holy Grail. Victims' letters flooded the docket, Wiesel's fury. A thief stole my soul. Each a gut punch to the bench. No cross-examination, but Judge Denny Chin pierced the veil. Your crimes were staggeringly evil. Sentencing in June drew 170 speakers, their testimonies a requiem. A 79-year-old woman's life savings gone, her dreams of grandkids' weddings dust. Madoff, unrepentant, murmured, I am responsible, but eyes averted from the gallery's glares. Chin's hammer fell. 150 years, the arithmetic of atonement, ensuring he'd die caged. Ruth forfeited $4 billion in assets, her Fifth Amendment shield no match for the IRS. Shocks rippled, suicides post-sentencing. Mark hanging himself on the anniversary eve in 2010, Andrew succumbing to lymphoma in 2014, both whispering of their father's shadow. As marshals led him to Butner, North Carolina's medium security pen, Madoff flashed a ghost of that old squint defiance or despair. The aftermath etched permanent scars on finance's facade. Madoff's 2021 death from kidney failure in a Duke hospital bed. Incognito, under guard, closed no wounds. His victims' fund, seeded with $4 billion from clawbacks, doled pennies on the dollar. Charities shuttered, families fractured. Wall Street reformed reluctantly. Dodd-Frank's shadow banking regs, whistleblower bounties. But the trust deficit lingers, a chill wind through boardrooms. Ruth, shorn of luxury, lives quietly in Connecticut on $1.5 million kept, her memoir a whisper of regret. In reflection, Madoff's phantom unmasks the alchemy of authority. How one man's steady hand, unchecked by envy or scrutiny, can transmute faith into fool's gold. He didn't prey on the greedy alone. He harvested the hopeful, the retirees, the philanthropists, who saw in his returns a mirror of their own rectitude. Yet the cruelest insight? The pyramid endured because we wanted it to. Our aversion to volatility a blindfold to the void. Today, as algorithms guard the gates, his shadow reminds, in the market's endless night, the sure thing is often the snare, and the wizard, when unmasked, just a man with empty sleeves. He orchestrated wealth's greatest illusion, until the curtain call revealed the stage was bare. Case 5. The Ghost Empire. Tom Petter's Invisible Deals. Close your eyes and picture a Midwestern tycoon. His grin as broad as a harvest moon, shaking hands with pension fund managers over stakes in Minneapolis, swearing that billions in retail deals, Polaroids, NASCAR gear, movie props, were as solid as the family farm he grew up on. By 2008, Tom Petters had convinced the world his Petters Group worldwide was a $3.65 billion juggernaut, snapping up distressed inventory for pennies and flipping it for fortunes. But when a single phone call from a wary insider pierced the veil, the empire dissolved like morning mist, leaving 2,000 investors, unions, charities, everyday savers, staring at $3.7 billion in smoke. How did a boy from a small Iowa town build a ghost factory of fake invoices, turning trust into a tomb? Thomas Joseph Petters was born in 1957 in Asbury, Iowa, a speck of a town where cornfields whispered of steady toil and Catholic Sundays. The son of a school janitor and a homemaker, he was the wiry kid with a hustler's spark, hawking newspapers at 10, flipping junkyard cars by 16. By his early 20s, he dropped out of college and landed in the Twin Cities, where the retail boom of the 1980s was a siren song. Petter started small, a pawn shop in 1986, then a discount electronics chain called Red Tag USA, peddling overstock TVs and stereos from a rundown warehouse on the edge of St. Paul. Charismatic, with a farmer's drawl and a knack for storytelling, he charmed suppliers and bankers alike. His pitch a folksy blend of Midwestern grit and big league vision. We're buying tomorrow's trash today, he'd say, eyes twinkling over coffee at Perkins. By 1993, he'd rebranded as Petters Group Worldwide, a private equity play on distressed assets, snapping up liquidated goods from bankrupt retailers like Kmart or Montgomery Ward, repackaging them for quick sales to big box chains. Success snowballed. A 1999 deal for Fingerhut's catalog empire netted him national ink, and by the early 2000s, PGW sprawled across 20 states, with offices in a sleek Wayzata high-rise overlooking Lake Minnetonka. Petters married twice, first to a high school sweetheart, then to model-turned-philanthropist Michelle, with whom he raised 3 kids in a $5 million lakeside manse. He was the everman's mogul, sponsoring youth hockey leagues, tithing to evangelical churches, rubbing elbows with senators at ribbon cuttings for his NASCAR sponsorships. Investors flocked. Milwaukee's Teamsters Pension Fund wired $100 million. Southern California's public employees, $150 million. Drawn by audited returns of 15 to 20. Backed by invoices stamped with blue-chip logos. U.S. Bank, GE Capital. Life in the Petters orbit hummed with optimism. Employees picnicked on company barges. Quarterly bonuses flowed like the Mississippi. To the Heartland heart, he wasn't a financier. He was family, a self-made sage who turned scraps into salvation. His world a quilt of quiet triumphs, stitched with handshakes and holy vows. The seam began to fray in the humid haze of 2000, when the dot-com hangover squeezed retail margins like a vice. Petter's legitimate flips, buying pallets of unsold DVDs or jeans, yielded slimmer profits, barely covering the loans propping his growth. What kicked off as a bridge loan from a friendly lender morphed into a meticulous forgery. Fake purchase orders for non-existent inventory. Sold to phantom buyers like a made-up Target division. By 2002, with debts cresting $500 million, the operation shifted fully to fabrication. His CFO, Brent Christensen, churning out backdated invoices on PGW letterhead, stamped with forged signatures. Petters, from his corner suite with its golf trophies and family photos, greenlit the pivot. "Keep the deals coming," he'd murmur, his drawl steady as scripture. Greed, once a sidecar to ambition, roared forward. Funds from new marks, hedge funds like Ampath, nonprofits like the Thrivent Financial, funneled straight to payouts for old ones, a carousel of counterfeit commerce. He splurged on symbols of ascent, a $20 million yacht, private jets to Monaco, a stake in the Timberwolves NBA team that had fans chanting his name. The moral chasm widened in hushed executive huddles. Deanna Coleman, his bookkeeper, later confessed the nausea of shredding real records, but loyalty and fat paychecks silenced the stirrings. Investors saw polish, glossy prospectuses touting $1.5 billion in closed deals, roadshows in Chicago with pie charts of perpetual growth. Whispers occasionally surfaced, a supplier querying a bogus order, but Petters quashed them with charm offensives, gifting Rolexes or scripture-embossed Bibles. By 2007, the ghost empire spanned $3.65 billion in paper trades, its invoices a blizzard of lies. Movie reels from a bankrupt distributor that never existed, Polaroid film palettes diverted from factories long shuttered. The crime wasn't a heist, but a slow suffocation, the air of authenticity pumped into a vacuum until the lungs of trust collapsed. The first fissure cracked open on September 23, 2008, when David Harold, a one-time Petters ally turned skeptic, picked up the phone in a Toronto suburb and dialed the SEC. "It's a Ponzi, fake everything." His tip, born of a soured partnership, lit the fuse. Federal agents from the FBI's Minneapolis field office, under Special Agent Janet Loria, swarmed PGW's headquarters that afternoon, badges flashing amid the whir of printers. What they commandeered, terabytes of digital forgeries, unleashed a forensic frenzy. Invoices cross-checked against supplier logs, revealing 90 as phantoms, bank wires traced to Petters' personal slush, $200 million to his yacht fund alone. Clues tumbled forth like dominoes, a whistleblower's thumb drive with email chains joking about creative accounting. Christensen's calendar blocked for invoice runs. The probe ballooned, enlisting IRS fraud units and state attorneys. Raids hit Petters' Lake home, seizing Hummers and Bibles annotated with deal notes. Harold's call had sparked a cascade. Investors like Palm Beach Capital yanking $200 million mid-transfer, triggering a liquidity panic. Loria's team pursued leads through Wall Street's underbelly. Feeder funds grilled in New York, offshore alerts to the Caymans, uncovering a $185 million loan from Canadian bank secured by air. Tension mounted in October's chill. Petters, holed up in a hotel suite, fielded frantic calls from Michelle, his empire's gears grinding to a halt as employees fled like rats from a sinking barge. By November, the net cinched. Forensic accountants tallied $3.7 billion in losses, victims spanning 20 states, firefighters' unions bankrupted, churches padlocked. Whispers of corner-cutting turned to screams. A key aide, Robert White, flipped under immunity, mapping the forgery factory. What began as one man's doubt had metastasized into a federal dragnet, the clues carving a confession from the chaos. Petters hadn't just faked deals. He'd fabricated a faith that the heartland held sacred. The reckoning roared into U.S. District Court in St. Paul that October, Petters pleading guilty to 20 counts: wire fraud, money laundering, security scams, in a hearing as stark as a stripped harvest field. At 51, his once boyish face sallow under fluorescent lights, he stood before Judge Richard Kyle, voice cracking as he admitted, "I orchestrated it all, a betrayal of epic proportions." Prosecutors, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney John Marty, laid bare the ledger of lies: 18,000 bogus invoices, $2 billion siphoned to luxuries, a $10 million wedding for his daughter, jets to evangelical retreats. Victim impact seared the air. A Milwaukee union rep, voice thick, describing pension/30, retirees choosing heat or meds. Revelations jolted the bench. Petters' own notes plotting evergreen deals to roll over debt. Emails to Michelle fretting the house of cards. No trial, but the allocution was crucifixion. Kyle, I. Steely, cataloged the carnage. 2,000 claimants, from Iowa widows to California teachers, their futures foreclosed. Sentence in February 2009. 50 years, no parole, a life term for a life stolen. Michelle drew 5 years for complicity. Her tearful plea of blind love, no shield. Restitution, $3.7 billion, a phantom sum against seized assets auctioned for scraps. Shocks reverberated, a co-conspirator's suicide note blaming Tom's vision. As deputies cuffed him, Petters murmuring to reporters, "Pray for me." The courtroom emptied to echoes of quiet sobs. The ghost finally exorcised. The empire's ashes fertilized reforms, but little else. PGW's corpse fed a bankruptcy beast, clawbacks netting $2 billion over years, pennies for the plundered, who sold homes and skipped college tuitions. Petters languishes in a Terre Haute supermax, his appeals dust. Michelle released in 2014 to a quiet divorce and obscurity. Minnesota's retail scene scarred, trust in private equity chilled, Dodd-Frank echoes, with feeder fund regs born of the fallout. In the quiet reflection, Petters' ghost unmasks the allure of the American striver, how a farm boy's bootstrap myth, unchecked, can lasso the vulnerable into freefall. He didn't dupe the greedy. He ensnared the steadfast, the unions, the faithful, who saw in his deals a reflection of their own hard-won grit. Yet the deepest cut, the pyramid thrived on proximity, handshakes over pie, until the invisible hand of doubt reclaimed what visibility never earned. Today, as supply chains hum with algorithms, his shadow lingers, in the fine print of every invoice, a reminder that empires built on air collapse not with a crash, but a sigh, leaving fields fallow and families forever chasing the harvest that never came. He traded in tomorrow's treasures, until tomorrow foreclosed on his soul. Case 6, the law firm Labyrinth, Scott Rothstein's Forged Fortunes. Step into the marble-floored lobby of a Fort Lauderdale skyscraper, where crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow on power lunches and whispered confidences, and a brash lawyer in a 5,000 Brioni suit boasts of secret settlements that could double your money overnight. In the boom years of South Florida's real estate frenzy, Scott Rothstein peddled these phantom payouts to the wealthy. His Rothstein-Rosenfeld-Adler firm a labyrinth of locked-file rooms, hiding not justice, but a $1.2 billion Ponzi that ensnared bankers, politicians, and retirees alike. But when a routine wire transfer bounced into oblivion, the corridors echoed with the clank of cuffs. How did a disbarred ambulance chaser from the Bronx forge a legal empire on lies as thick as the humidity? Scott W. Rothstein burst onto Florida's legal scene in the mid-1990s, a transplant from the Bronx, with a law degree from Nova Southeastern and a firebrand's flair for the courtroom. Born in 1962 to a Jewish family of modest means, his father a garment worker, his mother a homemaker, he'd scrapped through Brooklyn College on scholarships, channeling a street-smart edge into personal injury suits. At 28, he landed in Fort Lauderdale, a sun-drenched haven for the litigious, founding his solo practice in a strip mall office stacked with case files and dreams of bigger verdicts. Charismatic, with a booming laugh and a Rolodex of cop buddies from his prosecutor days, Rothstein quickly made waves, multimillion-dollar wins against insurers, headlines for taking down a corrupt judge. By 2002, he partnered with Stuart Rosenfeld and Joseph Adler, rebranding as RRA, a boutique firm specializing in class action lawsuits against big pharma and banks, their tagline, "Justice for the Underdog." The trio's office swelled to 70 lawyers in a gleaming 23-story tower on Las Olas Boulevard, a monument to their ascent. Rooftop helipad for client schmoozes, a 1 million art collection of Picassos and Warhols. Rothstein, the rainmaker, was the star, a family man with a trophy wife, Kimberly, and 2 young daughters, volunteering at synagogues, hosting fundraisers for Rick Scott's gubernatorial run. To South Florida's elite, he was the fixer, brokering settlements in sealed rooms, his whispers of confidential deals, a siren's call to the risk-averse rich. Life pulsed with the rhythm of excess. Yacht parties in the Intracoastal, private jets to Vegas, quarterly bonuses that bought Ferraris for the staff. Investors, from hedge fund managers to Broward County retirees, wired funds into RRA's structured settlement program. Advance money on lawsuit windfalls, earned 20 to 50 in months, all guaranteed by ironclad non-disclosures. Rothstein's world was one of vaulted trust, where NDAs muffled doubts and his baritone sealed fates. The firm a beacon in Florida's frothy 2000s boom. The descent slithered in during the summer of 2005, when a string of lost cases drained RRA's coffers like a leaky hull. Rothstein, staring at $10 million in debts from lavish overhead, the tower's lease alone $2 million yearly, hatched a scheme over scotch in his penthouse office. Fabricate massive settlements from fictional plaintiffs against deep-pocket defendants like Pfizer or Bank of America. It started small, a $5 million advance to a golfing pal, repaid from a new Mark's check, but snowballed into a labyrinth of forgeries. By 2006, with the housing bubble inflating egos, he peddled pipeline deals. 100 million judgments in negotiation. Documents stamped with forged judge signatures, stashed in locked safes accessible only to him. Funds cycled in a toxic loop, new wires paying old notes, interest juiced to lure deeper. Greed metastasized. Rothstein's lifestyle eclipsed the sun. A $6 million waterfront manse, $500,000 in Hermes bags for Kimberly. Bribes to politicians funneled through PACs. The moral levy breached in boardroom shadows. Rosenfeld and Adler, complicit in the haze, turned blind eyes for their slices. Yachts, mistresses. A $1.2 million Maserati Rothstein gifted Adler. Salesman, under NDAs thicker than law books, cold called the connected. This is better than stocks. No volatility, just verdict velocity. Doubts flickered. A client querying a settlement date. But Rothstein quashed them with bluster and bonuses, his charisma a caulk for cracks. By 2008, as subprime tremor shook the state, $1.2 billion had poured in from 100 investors. The firm's ledgers a maze of Excel illusions. Fake wire confirmations, sham escrow accounts at TD Bank. The crime congealed not in a vault heist, but a verdict's counterfeit, justices' robes draped over avarice, until the gavel's echo rang hollow. The unraveling tripped on a Tuesday in October 2009, when a $49 million wire to investor Steve Capo, meant to close a phantom deal, bounced back from an empty RRA account, its sender code a ghost. Capo, a bulldog developer, didn't simmer. He stormed the tower with his lawyer, demanding keys to the file room. What they glimpsed through a cracked door, empty cabinets, scribbled post-its, ignited the spark. By dawn, tips flooded the FBI's Miami field office, where white-collar squad lead Jacqueline Herman greenlit a wiretap on Rothstein's BlackBerry. Agents, posing as janitors, slipped bugs into the boardroom, capturing calls thick with panic. Stall them. Say the judge is deliberating. The probe ignited like dry tinder. Forensic teams raided the 23rd floor at 6 a.m., badges parting the lobby's hush, seizing servers and safes that spilled the labyrinth. 1,500 forged documents, bank statements doctored in Photoshop, a deal Bible listing 40 fictional cases, with payouts totaling $5 billion. Clues cascaded, TD Bank's fraud alerts on circular wires, a whistleblower paralegal's USB of deleted emails boasting, the best con since Madoff. Herman's crew pursued threads across the Glitter Gulch, subpoenas to Las Olas banks, interviews with shell-shocked clients who'd sunk $20 million each. Tension coiled through November's chill rains. Rothstein fled to Morocco on a private jet, holding up in a Casablanca riad, but extradition loomed, his phone pings traced by Interpol. Back home, the firm imploded, employees fleeing with shredders, Rosenfeld confessing over plea coffee. By December, the net strangled. $1.2 billion in losses tallied. Victims from Palm Beach socialites to a Canadian pension fund. Their NDAs no shield against the subpoena storm. Whispers of deeper rot surfaced. Bribes to Florida bar officials for Rothstein's past ethics probes. What began as a bounce check had burrowed into a federal excavation, the forgery's ink still wet, revealing a justice system not just bent, but broken by its own. The spectacle surged into Fort Lauderdale's federal courthouse in January 2010. Rothstein, extradited and shackled, pleading guilty to 5 racketeering counts before the ink dried on the indictment. A RICO web spun from his own threads. At 47, his once chiseled jaw slack beneath the jumpsuit. He faced Judge Williams Locke in a voice rasped by regret. I built a house of cards on lies, and it crushed everyone. Prosecutors, helmed by razor-sharp Paul Schwartz, unfurled the horrors. Exhibits of forged dockets mimicking real Broward cases. Wire trails looping $600 million to Rothstein's pockets. $57 million in jewelry alone. Victim testimonies lacerated the air. A 72-year-old widow. Her $2 million nest egg gone, voice fracturing. He promised security. He delivered solitude. Revelation stunned. Kimberly's guilty plea for document destruction. A $5 million slush to a gubernatorial campaign. Even RRA's charity golf, a front for client cons. No trial, but the sentencing in June was theater. 50 years, the math of middle age to grave. Restitution $1.2 billion, a ledger laugh. Rosenfeld and Adler drew 20 and 10 years. Their betrayals bartered for testimony. Shocks pulsed outward. Suicides in the scandal's wake. A junior partner's overdose. Whispers of a client's rooftop plunge. As Locke's gavel cracked, Rothstein locked eyes with his daughters in the gallery, murmuring, "Daddy's mistake." The labyrinth's architect led away to a Supermax cage, his Brioni days dust. The collapse carved canyons in South Florida skyline. RRA's tower foreclosed. Auction for pennies. Clawbacks reclaimed $200 million. Crumbs for the crushed. Retirees on ramen. Charities shuttered. Rothstein, paroled in 2024 after 14 years for good behavior, emerges a ghost, disbarred, broke, under witness protection from mob ties unearthed in the probe. Kimberly, 5 years served, rebuilds in anonymity. Florida's bar tightened ethics nets, but the scar festers. A legal fraternity's faith fractured. NDAs now eyed as veils for vice. In the dim reflection, Rothstein's forge unmasks the seduction of the suit. How authority's garb, unchecked, cloaks the con artist's core. He didn't ensnare the naive. He hooked the knowing, the moguls, the marked, who craved the shortcut to vindication. Yet the verdict's verdict? Pyramids of paper perish, not from want of ink, but lack of light. In justice's dim halls, the sure settlement is often the slyest snare, leaving echoes of equity in empty chambers. He locked away fortunes in legal vaults, until the vaults unlocked his chains. Case 7. The Island of False Sanctuary. R. Alan Stanford's Caribbean Mirage. Imagine a balmy evening on Antigua's cricket greens, where champagne flows under palm fronds and a knighted financier in a linen suit toasts irrevocable returns to a throng of British expats and Texas oilmen, their deposits swelling his offshore bank like a tropical swell. For 20 years, Sir Alan Stanford peddled certificates of deposit at Stanford International Bank, yields of 8 to 10 in a volatile world, safe from Uncle Sam's grasp, luring $8 billion from 30,000 souls worldwide. But when a 2009 raid shattered the island idol, revealing a Ponzi paradise built on borrowed bliss, the mirage dissolved into indictments and exile. How did a bald-headed Texan, crowned by the Queen herself, turn a colonial outpost into a vault of vanishing fortunes? Robert Allen Stanford entered the financial fray in 1979, a lanky Waco native with a gambler's grin and a Baptist upbringing that preached thrift but practiced audacity. Born in 1949 to a hardware store owner, he was the ambitious middle son, expelled from high school for selling beer on campus, yet hustling his way to Baylor University on a track scholarship. At 24, fresh from a stint in Houston real estate, he founded Stanford Financial Group with $40,000 scraped from family loans, a one-man shop in the Lone Star sprawl peddling mutual funds door-to-door. Charismatic, with a drawl like warm bourbon and a flair for the dramatic, bald pate gleaming under boardroom lights. He built an empire on trust. Offices from Houston to Mexico City. A stable of brokers who preached his gospel of global diversification. By the 1980s, he'd pivoted to Antigua, snapping up the ailing Bank of Antigua in 1985 for $15 million, rebranding its Stanford International Bank, SIB. A tax haven for the high net worth, its CDs promising steady gains untouched by IRS audits. Stanford knighted in 2006 for cricket philanthropy. His Stanford 2020 tournament, a splashy $28 million lure, became Sir Alan, a jet-setting philanthropist with a $100 million Antigua estate. Vandenberg Point, complete with helipad and pet peacocks. Married thrice, once to a Stanford co-ed, later to a Jamaican beauty. He fathered 5 children, doting on them amid polo matches and papal audiences, a $1 million Vatican donation. To investors, from New York Jewish federations to Latin American elites, SIB was sanctuary. Audited returns audited by his own firm. No FDIC, but better, our word. Life on the island pulsed with his rhythm. Staffers in monogram polo shirts. Client galas on his 164-foot yacht Sea Eagle. Yields mailed quarterly like clockwork. Stanford's persona was the Mirage's heart. A self-made sage blending southern charm with Caribbean cool. His world a sun-dappled dream, where fortunes grew like hibiscus, untethered from mainland mayhem. The tide turned in the sweltering summer of 1990, when U.S. regulators sniffed at Stanford's opaque operations, forcing a grudging SEC registration. But growth demanded more than compliance. By the mid-1990s, with $300 million in assets, real investments, bonds, real estate, lagged the promised 10. Stanford, from his cliffside office overlooking the turquoise Caribbean, decreed the slight. Fabricate the yields with fresh inflows, a Ponzi pulse masked as prudence. It began innocuously, diverting 90 of deposits to his Houston broker-dealer, Stanford Capital, for proprietary trades, but evolved into outright illusion. Fake account statements from his U.S. arm, $1.2 billion loaned back to SIB in circular fictions. Greed crested like a rogue wave. By 2000, with $1 billion under management, he siphoned $200 million for extravagances. A fleet of bombardier jets, $50 million in Antigua real estate, bribes to island officials for regulatory blind eyes. The moral reef cracked in hushed cabals. His nephew, Jim Davis, the reluctant CFO, later confessed to dread. Allen said it was all above board, diversified globally. Salesmen dubbed Knights of the Round Table, jetted to London and Dubai, sealing deals with cricket tickets and confidentiality oaths. Doubts lapped at the shore. A 2003 off-island audit flagging unusual liquidity, but Stanford swatted them with charm and cash, gifting Rolexes or papal blessings. By 2008, as the financial crisis lashed global markets, $7 billion had flooded SIB from 28,000 clients, 80 parked in his irrevocable CDs. The true portfolio, a $100 million sliver in shaky stocks. The crime solidified not in a vault breach, but a sanctuary subversion. The island's isolation a perfect petri for deceit, where knighthood cloaked the king's nakedness. The storm broke on February 16, 2009, when SEC agents, tipped by a Scottish whistleblower's 2005 missive finally heeded, descended on Stanford's Houston HQ, with search warrants rattling like thunder. 50 agents in raid jackets stormed the 33-story tower, seizing servers and safes amid gasps from manicured receptionists. What unfurled was a procedural cyclone. Forensic dives into SIB's ledgers revealing the mirage. $8.5 billion in CDs backed by $1.3 billion in assets. The rest a web of intrafirm IOUs and fabricated trades. Clues erupted like geysers. Auditor Deloitte's 2003 resignation buried by Stanford's pressure. Emails from Davis pleading, "Stop the bleeding," in 2007. The probe, helmed by SEC litigator Dean Jordan, spanned hemispheres. Antigua's Financial Services Regulatory Commission raided SIB's pink colonial vaults, freezing $3 billion. FBI diversities fanned to Caracas and Geneva, tracing $500 million in laundered luxuries. Tension surged through spring's heat. Stanford, summering in Virginia, learned via CNN, his face paling as anchors dubbed it Madoff 2.0. He lawyered up with a white shoe DC firm, stonewalling with denials. A liquidity crunch, nothing more. But the net hauled. A court-appointed receiver, Houston's Ralph Janvey, clawed back $300 million from yacht sales, victim list swelling to 30,000, Irish pensioners, Colombian tycoons, their remittances halted mid-air. Whispers of insider trading surfaced. Stanford's $2.2 million bet against his own stock days before the raid. By June, indictments loomed. Island staff flipped, spilling tales of Allen's black book of bribed regulators. What ignited as a whistle's wail had whipped into a transnational tempest, the clues carving canyons through the Caribbean calm, exposing not just fraud, but a feudal fiefdom where sovereignty served the sovereign. The trial tempest roared into Houston's federal courthouse in October 2011, Stanford facing 14 counts, securities fraud, obstruction, conspiracy, a RICO requiem for his realm. At 62, shackled and shorn of his knighthood, revoked post-arrest, he pleaded not guilty, his drawl defiant. This is a regulatory lynching. Prosecutors, led by Bulldog Greg Costa, paraded the plunder over 5 weeks. Exhibits of phony statements promising 7.5 guaranteed. Bank runs in Antigua, where clients queued like refugees. Victim voices thundered, a Venezuelan doctor's $3 million gone, her clinic shuttered. He stole our future on his island paradise. Revelations rocked the jury. $65 million in personal withdrawals during the crisis, a $1.5 million finder's fee to a SEC consultant for soft audits. Stanford testified, a spectacle of bluster, claiming global arbitrage via secret sovereign deals, but cross-examination gutted him. Where the trades, Sir Allen? Silence, then sobs from the gallery. After 4 days' deliberation, guilty on all but one count, the foreman murmuring. No reasonable doubt, only deception. Sentence in June 2012. 110 years, a life sentence at 70, plus $7 billion restitution. A title sum against seized superyachts auctioned for $5 million. Shocks cascaded, co-conspirators like James Mouton drawing 10 years. Antigua's PM scandalized by bribe tapes. As marshals marched him to a Florida pen, Stanford waved to supporters, eyes misting. The fight's not over. But for the fleeced, the gavel's echo drowned all appeals. The mirage's evaporation etched exile into the archipelago. SIB's corpse birthed a receivership behemoth, clawbacks netting $1 billion over years, drip-fed to victims, many ruined. European retirees on state aid, Latin families fractured. Stanford, ailing in a Butner cell, appeals denied. His health a bartered plea for clemency denied in 2023. Antigua, his adopted Eden, real, tourism dipped, cricket tainted, while global havens tightened. FACA's gaze piercing offshore veils. In the salt-stung reflection, Stanford's sanctuary unmasks the exile of excess. How isolation breeds illusion, a knight's oath allure for the lost. He didn't hook the heedless. He harbored the hopeful, the expats, the elites, seeking shores beyond scrutiny. Yet the reef's truth? Pyramids of paradise topple not from storms without, but rot within, in finance's fevered flight. The irrevocable return is often the island's illusion, leaving castaways adrift on seas of what was sworn eternal. He knighted dreams on distant shores, until the crown slipped into the deep. Case 8. The Crypto Siren's Call. Bitconnect's Digital Deluge. Flashed to a dimly lit Las Vegas ballroom in January 2018, where strobe lights pulse like blockchain blocks, and a crowd of wide-eyed millennials chants to the moon. As a silver-tongued promoter in a Bitcoin T-vows, one daily yields on their crypto dreams, guaranteed, automated, unstoppable. Bitconnect, the platform behind it all, had ballooned from obscurity to a $3 billion behemoth in months, its lending program a siren's song to the disaffected, promising liberation from fiat's chains. But when the BCC token cratered 90 overnight, wiping out $2 billion and sparking SEC lawsuits, the deluge hit. Rage-filled YouTube rants, congressional hearings, and a founder vanished into the ether. How did a shadowy Indian coder's algorithm lure a global horde into the flood, turning digital gold into fool's pyrite? Satish Kumbani launched Bitconnect in October 2017 from the tech underbelly of Ahmedabad, India. A 30-something software engineer with a reclusive streak and a resume of middling IT gigs. Slender, bespectacled, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow. He embodied the crypto everyman. No Ivy pedigree, just a GitHub trail of unfinished bots and a white paper cribbed from Bitcoin's Bible. The blockchain boom was its canvas. Ethereum smart contracts had just ignited the ICO frenzy, and retail traders, scorched by 2008's embers, hungered for moonshots. Bitconnect debuted as a trading bot platform. Users locked Bitcoin into its lending program for arbitrage yields of 1 per day, compounded hourly via a proprietary algorithm that traded against volatility. No white paper details, just a sleek website with countdown timers and affiliate links promising 40 referral cuts. Combani, operating under the pseudonym Carlos, stayed off camera, directing a network of promoters like Trayvon James, a Miami hype man whose YouTube videos, Lumbos and laptops, racked millions of views. By November, Bitconnect's token, BCC, listed on exchanges, its price rocketing from 0.30 to 400 in weeks, fueled by leveraged loans and FOMO-fueled buys. The ecosystem bloomed, Telegram groups buzzing with hodl memes, roadshows in Dubai and Seoul where silk-suited reps flashed QR codes for instant stakes. Combani's world was virtual. Code commits from a nondescript flat. Funds funneled to anonymous wallets, while his foot soldiers lived large. Private jets for promoters, Lamborghinis as success symbols. To the crypto-curious, from California Uber drivers to Nigerian students, Bitconnect wasn't a scheme. It was salvation, a decentralized deluge washing away banks' tyranny. Its yields a digital dividend on faith alone. The moral current shifted in the December chill of 2017, when BCC's meteoric climb strained the smart contract seams. Real trades non-existent, payouts drawn from new deposits like water from a sieve. What began as aggressive marketing, billboards in Times Square, Super Bowl ads veiled as education, hardened into deception. The bottom myth, yields fabricated via token pumps, 80 of volume from affiliates recycling their own referrals. Combani, monitoring from his keyboard throne, tweaked the code to delay redemptions, citing network congestion, while siphoning 700 million to cold storage, his and his inner circles. Greed surged like a rogue wave. Promoters like James pocketed 10 million in commissions, flaunting diamond chains on Instagram, their scripts laced with FUD-proof bravado. The fracture deepened in encrypted chats. Doubts from early lenders. Where's the transparency? Met with bans and bot armies flooding forums with shills. By January 2018, with 1 million users and 3 billion in locked BTC, the platform was a torrent. Daily videos dissecting the math. Celebrity nods from Floyd Mayweather. Even a university course on Udemy. But beneath the blockchain sheen, the deluge brewed. Exchange delistings from South Korea's crackdown. Whispers of SEC probes. Combani's isolation armored him. No face, no fall guy. Just lines of code concealing the Ponzi's pulse. The crime wasn't coded in malice, but momentum. A siren's algorithm that sang of freedom while chaining fortunes to its whims. The floodgates burst on January 16, 2018, when the California Department of Business Oversight issued a cease and desist, branding Bitconnect an unregistered fraud. Within hours, BCC plunged 90, unlocking a $2 billion cascade of liquidations. Regulators pounced. SEC agents in Atlanta raided promoter offices, seizing laptops etched with affiliate spreadsheets, 240 million traced in kickbacks alone. What they decrypted was a digital deluge. Blockchain forensics by Chainalysis revealing circular flows, deposits to payouts, no external trades, wallets dumping 100 million pre-crash. Clues cascaded like error logs. Telegram archives of Combani's directives ramped the hype. A white paper plagiarized from OneCoin's playbook, YouTube takedowns exposing scripted testimonials. The pursuit spanned borders. FBI cyber units in Quantico liaised with India's CBI, tracing Combani's IP to Gujarat's safe houses, while Interpol pink noticed him for flight. Tension crackled through winter's code sprints. Promoters like James lawyered up, their lumbos leaned, victim forums erupting with doxed threats. By February, the net webbed global. EU probes freezing 50 million euros, class actions from Miami to Manila, tallying 100,000 claimants, traders bankrupted, families evicted. Whispers of suicide surfaced, a London coder's overdose. Notes citing, the bot lied. The deluge's depth emerged, 2.4 billion evaporated, the yield a yield to no one but the architects. What sparked as a regulatory ripple had swelled to a cyberstorm. The siren's code cracked open, spilling secrets into the ledger's unforgiving light. The reckoning rippled into Atlanta's federal court in September 2019, though Kambani eluded the dock, fled to India, his assets frozen but person a ghost. Promoters faced a fire. Glenn Arcaro, the silver-tongued MC, pleaded guilty to wire fraud, his 2018 Vegas footage replayed like a confessional reel. At 36, Arcaro stood before Judge Lee Martin May, voice quavering. "I sold the dream, but it was dust." Prosecutors, led by sharp-eyed Rajiv Diggal, dissected the deluge. Exhibits of wallet dumps, $775 million to Kambani's kin, affiliate pyramids with 50 levels deep, victim videos of shattered screens and sobs. Revelations rocked the bench. Mayweather's $30 million haul in undisclosed promos, the trading bot, a 50,000 off-the-shelf script. No full trial for the founder, but sentencing in 2020 hammered. Arcaro 38 months, 24 million forfeiture. James a fugitive, his channel demonetized. Restitution? $2 billion ordered, a blockchain IOU. Shocks echoed, a promoter's plea bargain spilling Kambani's Dubai bolt hole. Congressional hearings grilling crypto czars on Bitconnect 2.0s. As deputies led Arcaro away, the courtroom hummed with crypto ghosts, the siren's call silence to static. The aftermath surged like a post-crash fork. Bitconnect's corpse spawned SEC rules, crypto disclosures tightened, promoter bans etched in law, while victims clawed scraps from bankruptcy pools. $100 million doled in 2023. Pennies on the plunge. Kambani, indicted in absentia, lurks in legend, rumors of exile. His $2 billion stash a holy grail for tracers. Promoters faded. Arcaro paroled to obscurity. James nabbed in 2020 for 18 months. His YouTuber relic. The deluge drowned dreams but birthed vigilance. Exchanges mandating KYC. Yields above one red flagged as sirens. In the pixelated reflection, Bitconnect unmasks crypto's primal pull. How codes promise, unchecked, drowns the doubters in delusion. It didn't flood the foolish alone. It swept the faithful, the sidelined, the seekers, who heard in its hum a harmony against the old world's discord. Yet the ledger's lesson? Algorithms amplify avarice, not absolution. In the blockchain's boundless blue, the one daily is often the drop before the deluge, leaving wallets waterlogged and the faithful forever scanning for the next wave's whisper. They coded riches in the cloud, until the cloudburst claimed the coders. Case 9. The Auto Empire Facade. GPB Capital Stolen Engines. Visualize a gleaming showroom in New York City, where fleets of black Escalades and silver Corvettes line up like obedient soldiers, and a silver-haired dealmaker in a bespoke suit clasps hands with blue-collar workers, vowing their 100,000 investments will fuel a dealership dynasty with 8 to 10 returns, steady as a V8 Rumble. By 2018, GPB Capital had revved up $1.7 billion from 9,000 everyday investors, truckers, teachers, firefighters, lured by tales of luxury auto leases and service centers humming with profit. But when the odometer rolled back to reveal no engines at all, just a facade of forged manifests and phantom fleets, the crash came. Foreclosures, fury, and a founder fleeing to a $10 million mansion. How did a self-proclaimed capitalist for the little guy from Brooklyn hotwire an empire that left gears grinding in the grave? David Gentile co-founded GPB Capital Holdings in 2014, a burly Brooklynite in his mid-40s, with a voice like gravel and a backstory etched in immigrant sweat. Born in 1969 to Italian-American parents, his father a cab driver, his mother a seamstress, he ditched college for the streets, flipping used cars from a Queens lot by 20, his Rolodex bulging with mechanic pals and finance sharks. Charismatic, with a perpetual 5 o'clock shadow and a laugh that filled garages, Gentile pitched himself as the anti-Wall Street warrior. We're not bankers, we're builders, for the forgotten folks. GPB launched as a private equity fund targeting auto dealerships, buying underperforming lots in the Rust Belt, jazzing them with LED signs and latte lounges, then leasing fleets to Uber drivers and plumbers. By 2015, the firm had snagged 70 dealerships across 10 states, from Florida's sun-baked lots to Michigan's snowy forecourts, its offices in a nondescript Woodbury, New York, strip mall buzzing with cold callers in polo shirts. Gentile, married to his high school sweetheart, with 3 kids in tow. Burnished his everyman sheen, sponsoring Little League teams, tithing to Catholic charities, hosting investor appreciation barbecues with free hot dogs and horsepower demos. Investors, mostly middle-class marks from his network, union halls, church bulletins, wired in 50,000 chunks via radio ads on AM talk shows. Park your money where it drives returns. Yields flowed quarterly, 8 audited by his hand-picked accountants, backed by spreadsheets of acquired assets. 7,000 vehicles, 20 service centers. Gentile's world revved with blue-collar bravado, Corvette club memberships, a podcast railing against elitist ETFs, the fund a chrome-plated promise that the American garage dream could idle no more. The Pistons seized in the sticky summer of 2016, when auto sales stalled amid rising rates and trade wars, leaving GPB's acquisitions underwater like a flooded carburetor. Gentile, hunched over deal memos in his corner cubicle, faced a $200 million shortfall, overhead from celebrity spokesmen like Steve when gnawing the margins. What ignited as a bridge financing from a friendly lender curdled into fabrication, inflated asset values, leased cars that existed only on paper, service revenues booked from ghost bays. By 2017, with inflows cresting $500 million, the engine flipped to Ponzi mode, new checks greasing old redemptions, a vicious cycle masked by manic expansions, a national fleet of 10,000 vehicles that never turned a wheel. Greed accelerated. Gentile's take hit $30 million, a $6 million Trump Tower pad, $1.2 million in watches, bribes to radio hosts for airtime. The moral manifold cracked in after-hours huddles. CFO Jeffrey Schneider, a Gentile crony from Carflip days, later admitted the queeze. Dave said it was temporary. Growth would fix it. Brokers, juiced on commissions, hammered phone lines, guaranteed by the iron in the axles. Doubt sputtered, a retiree's query on a missing quarterly, but Gentile floored it with charm and comps, gifting signed baseballs from his Mets box seats. By 2018, $1.7 billion had poured in from 9,000 souls, the portfolio a smoke show. Dealerships mortgaged to the hubcaps, $100 million in receivables from fictional lessees. The crime wasn't a joyride, but a rollback. The dashboard of due diligence dummied, leaving investors chasing taillights into the dark. The breakdown hit like a blown gasket on January 8, 2018, when a Brooklyn firefighter, Sal Rizzo, 62, invested $250,000 for his pension, got a redemption delay notice and marched into GPB's lobby with a notary in tow. His complaint, amplified on a local news tip line, revved the engines of the New York Attorney General's office, where white-collar Chief James Sheehan subpoenaed bank records that afternoon. Agents from the SEC and FBI's Manhattan squad rolled in next, badges parting the parking lot's haze, raiding file cabinets that coughed up the fraud, asset logs with Vince traced to junkyards, lease contracts signed by John Does. Clues accelerated like nitrous, $40 million in personal wires to Gentile's family trusts, audio of sales calls promising bulletproof collateral. The probe downshifted into high gear. Forensic accountants from Eisner-Amper dissected QuickBooks, uncovering a $1.1 billion hole. 80 of dealerships underwater. Revenues juiced by 300. Tension idled through winter slush. Gentile, vacationing in Aspen, cut short for voluntary interviews, his BlackBerry pinging with shredded pleas from Schneider. By March, the dragnet hauled. Victim hotlines jammed with 5,000 calls. Teachers liquidating 401k. Cops facing evictions, class actions filing in Albany. Whispers of insider dump surfaced, Gentile's brother unloading shares pre-panic. The pursuit hit redline in spring raids on Florida lots, where acquired showrooms stood padlocked, keys long lost. What started as one-man stalled payout had hydroplaned into a multi-state manhunt, the facade's fiberglass peeling to expose the rusted frame beneath. The showdown screeched into Brooklyn federal court in September 2019, Gentile and Schneider facing 12 counts, securities fraud, wire schemes, money laundering, a racketeering indictment thicker than a service manual. At 50, his guts softened by stress, Gentile pleaded not guilty, his gravel voice booming. This is a liquidity hiccup, not a crime. Prosecutors, steered by Bulldog Letitia James's AG team, torqued the testimony over weeks. Exhibits of forged titles, 1,500 vehicles non-existent, Bank dumps showing $20 million to Gentile's Hamptons hideaway. Victim voices revved the jury. Rizzo, fists clenched, recounting his post-crash dialysis. My engine quit because of yours. Revelations backfired like exhaust. $8 million in Wynn-endorsed ads during the downturn. Schneider's flip spilling boardroom tapes. Dave, the fleet's fiction. Gentile testified, a burnout spectacle, claiming optimistic projections, but cross-exam eviscerated. Where are the keys, Mr. Gentile? The jury, many commuters themselves, deliberated 48 hours before guilty verdicts slammed like slammed doors. Sentence in February 2020. 21 years for Gentile, 12 for Schneider, $1.3 billion restitution. A torque spec too tight for the twisted. Shock sidled the hall. A co-broker's plea for leniency citing suicidal ideation. Whispers of a Detroit investor's overdose. As cuffs clicked, Gentile nodded to his wife in the pews, murmuring, "Fix the car, honey." The Empire's chassis crushed under Justice's jack. The wreckage scattered shrapnel across the heartland. GPB's bankruptcy beast devoured assets. Dealerships liquidated for 20 cents on the dollar. Clawbacks netting $400 million by 2023. Drips for the drained. Firefighters on food stamps. Widows wiring pleas to Albany. Gentile cools in a Pennsylvania pen. Appeals axed. His little guy lore a punchline. Schneider, out on good time in 2025. Slinks in shadows. Disbarred from finance. New York's AG forged investor safeguards. Private fund disclosures beefed. Radio ad regs revved. But the oil stain spreads. Unions auditing portfolios. Retirees revving class actions. In the exhaust-fumed reflection, GPB's facade unmasks the horsepower of hope. How a hustler's Humvee, unchecked, hauls the humble into the ditch. Gentile didn't hotwire the heedless. He hijacked the hardworking. The gearheads, the guardians, who saw in his revs a roadmap to retirement's rest stop. Yet the transmission's truth? Pyramids on pavement skid not from speed alone, but slick lies. In the auto artery of ambition, the steady yield is often the stolen starter, leaving stalls silent and savers forever stalled at the pump of promise. He drove dreams on borrowed horsepower, until the tank ran dry on his parade. Case 10. The baseball diamond deceit. Horizon stolen dreams. Under the crack of a summer bat, in a sleepy Michigan town, where fireflies dance like misplaced hopes and families pack bleachers with coolers and cheers, a team owner rises from the dugout to announce, "Your investments aren't just funding home runs, they're building legacies." For nearly a decade, William Bowe French had fans and locals alike swinging for fences with promises of private equity windfalls from his Horizon management firm, tied to the beloved Traverse City pit spitters. Millions flowed in, dreams of steady 12 returns blooming like box scores, until a 2022 audit revealed the diamond was dug with fool's gold. $10.6 million vanished into a personal outfield of excess. How did a charismatic coach from the heartland turn a summer pastime into a Ponzi pitch, striking out the very community that rooted for him? William Bowe French stepped into Traverse City's spotlight in 2012. A 39-year-old transplant from Tennessee with a coach's whistle around his neck and a salesman's silver tongue. Born in 1973 to a military family that bounced him across bases, he honed his pitch in youth leagues, captaining high school teams, then grinding as a minor league scout before landing in Michigan's cherry orchards. Tall, tanned, with a perpetual ball cap shadowing his easy grin, French embodied small-town Americana. A volunteer fireman, church deacon at First Baptist, dad to 3 kids who scampered the baselines. He acquired the Pit Spitters, a collegiate summer league team in the Northwoods League, in 2015 for $500,000, rebranding their waterfront stadium as Werfel's Village at Comstock Field. A nod to local lore. Horizon Management, his holding company, pitched itself as the savvy steward, investing in the team, a craft brewery, and cherry processing plants, all wrapped in the romance of hometown heroes. Seminars at the ballpark drew crowds. Blue-collar workers, retirees, even the mayor, were French, in pinstripes and cleats, unfurled charts. 10 to 15 annual returns, secured by tickets and concessions. By 2016, the fund hummed at $2 million from 100 locals. Yields paid promptly from new wires, audited by a friendly CPA. Life in Traverse City revolved around his rhythm. tailgates with hot dogs and high fives, youth clinics where he'd toss softballs to starry-eyed kids, his wife Christie baking pies for investor picnics. To the faithful fans who'd bought season tickets and shares alike, French wasn't a financier. He was family. The guy who kept the lights on the diamond. His world a seventh-inning stretch of shared prosperity. The foul tip came in the frost of 2017, when league expansions demanded stadium upgrades, $1 million in turf and lights that Horizon couldn't fund without fresh capital. French, pacing the empty outfield under sodium glow, crossed the rubber, divert investor checks to cover ops, promising bridge loans, repaid from future home runs. What started as a pinch hit ballooned into batting .000 by 2018, with $5 million under management, real returns dried, concessions flat, cherry yield sour from tariffs, and the scheme solidified. New money batting cleanup for old obligations, a cycle as relentless as extra innings. Greed stepped up to the plate. French's cut swelled to $3 million, a $2.5 million lakefront manse, $500,000 in ATVs and boats, luxury boxes at the stadium for his cronies. The moral mound eroded in clubhouse whispers. His brother-in-law, the operations manager, later confessed to churn. Bo said the team would save us. Brokers, mostly ex-players in ill-fitting suits, barnstormed VFW halls. It's like owning a piece of DiMaggio, guaranteed grand slams. Doubts popped up like popflies. A widow's query on delayed dividends. But French fielded them with charm and comps, gifting signed bats or box seats. By 2021, $10.6 million had crossed the plate, from 300 investors, teachers ponying up $20,000, farmers their harvest windfalls, the portfolio a mirage, pit spitters valued at $10 million on paper, but mortgaged to the foul poles, brewery profits brewed from thin air. The crime wasn't a bunt single, but a cycle hit. The community's cradle rocked with counterfeit cheers, until the anthem played false. The shift turned double play on a crisp October afternoon in 2022, when a Traverse City retiree, Helen Kowalski, 78 and widowed, flagged her $150,000 yield as MIA to the Michigan Securities Division. Her tip, forwarded to the FBI's Detroit field office, sparked a bunt single into a rally. Agents, led by case agent Maria Vargas, subpoenaed Horizon's QuickBooks that week, unearthing the slight. Ledgers showing $8 million in loans to French's personal accounts, stadium invoices inflated $400, clues lined up like base coaches, wire trails to his Florida timeshare, emails pitching exclusive equity to out-of-state marks, a CPA's flagged audit buried by bonuses. The probe stole bases through winter's chill. Undercover buys at Pittsburgh's games netted sales scripts promising no-risk RBIs, while forensic hounds traced $1.2 million in team merch sales to French's kids' college funds. Tension built like a no-hitter. French, coaching a youth scrimmage, fielded the first subpoena with a bluff, accounting glitch. But the net tagged him. Investor hotlines lit up with 200 complaints, class action murmurs from Grand Rapids firms. By spring 2023, the inning flipped. Raids hit the stadium office, seizing servers amid batting practice echoes, revealing a $4 million cherry futures scam that never fruited. Whispers of deeper foul play surfaced, bribes to league officials for favorable schedules. What blooped as one fan's foul had grand slammed into a federal cleanup. The Diamond's dirt sifted for every stolen base. The bottom of the ninth pitched into Grand Rapids Federal Court in July 2023. French facing 14 counts, wire fraud, securities violations, money laundering, a lineup of larceny from the heartland. At 50, his cap off and grin gone, he pleaded guilty mid-at-bat, sparing a full trial but not the reckoning. I struck out my community, he rasped to Judge Robert Jonker. Prosecutors, helmed by Assistant U.S. Attorney Ronald C. Meyer, ran the bases with exhibits. Bank dumps of $2.8 million to luxury halls, victim ledgers tallying 300 souls, Kowalski's nest egg her late husband's tool shed fund. Testimonies tagged the stands. A firefighter's choked account of delayed retirement. The crack of the bat was my savings, now it's silence. Revelations curved the air. $600,000 in team salaries to family ghosts. A philanthropy slush padding his deacon dues. No stolen bases in court. Jonker cataloged the carnage. Charity stiffed. Kids' college dreams double-headed. Sentence in October. 12 years at minimum security in Milan, Michigan. 10.6 million restitution. A full-count strikeout. Christie drew probation for complicity. Her pies now a plea for mercy. Shocks rippled the bleachers. A co-investor's suicide note citing foul dreams. League sanctions benching the pit spitter's ownership. As deputies walked him off, French glanced at the empty diamond, murmuring, "Batter up." The game's fixer finally called out. The final out echoed through Traverse City's orchards. The pit spitters sold to a non-profit collective for $1.2 million. Their game's a subdued salute to survival. Horizon's husk fed a victim fund, clawbacks scraping $3 million by 2025. Quarters for the quartered, teachers tutoring second jobs, farmers fallowing fields. French, eligible for release in 2033. Pens appeals from his cell, his coaching whistle a relic. Michigan securities net tightened, small fund audits mandatory. Fan investor warnings at ballparks. Yet the scar scores the soil. A league's luster dimmed, trust traded like bubblegum cards. In the dust-choked reflection, French's diamond unmasks the pitch of proximity. How a hometown hero's hustle, unchecked. Fields flies for the faithful. He didn't beam the boastful. He benched the believers, the rooters, the regulars, who saw in his swings a slice of the American pastime. Yet the box scores sting. Pyramids on the diamond erode not from grandstand's roar, but the pitcher's mound's mirage. In the heartland's hardball haze, the steady return is often the rigged relay, leaving fans forever fouling off the fastball of faith. He swung for the fences with borrowed bats, until the umpire called time on his at-bat. What's your take on this story? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe to the Crime O'Clock, because the next mystery is already ticking.